This is the backyard grill that turns weeknight burgers into steakhouse sears and lets me keep a sauce simmering without stepping back into the kitchen. I've been cooking on the Captiva Designs 4-burner propane gas grill, and it's built for people who want hot and fast performance with the convenience of a side burner and real storage. Not a flimsy cart that rattles every time you flip a steak. I'd put this squarely in the family and friends patio category. It's for anyone who wants a dependable propane setup that heats up quickly, handles a table's worth of food at once, and looks like a proper outdoor station. If your cooking style leans towards searing, grilling burgers, chops, kebabs, and toasting buns while you keep a pot going on the side, this fits the bill. If you live for low and slow smoking, it can do a version of that with technique, but it's not where this grill shines. The design choices come across as practical first, pretty second, though it does look clean with its stainless panels and squared-off cabinet. What I notice in daily use is the porcelain-enameled cast iron grates. They're heavy and hold heat the way I want when coined steaks hit the surface. They're smoother than bare cast iron and easier to clean, but I still treat them like cast iron. Preheat thoroughly, brush while hot, and wipe a light film of oil after cooling. The cooking surface gives me enough room to split zones, hot on one side for searing, medium on the other for finishing, and there's a warming rack overhead that actually helps, not just a token shelf. The side shelves are wide enough for trays, and the integrated tool hooks are where my tongs and brush now live. The bottle opener is a small touch that ends up being used more than I expected during a cookout. The cabinet keeps the 20-pound propane tank tucked away so I'm not staring at hoses, and the 4 casters let me roll and pivot the whole grill with a hand on the handle. 2 quick flicks on the caster locks, and it stays put, even when I'm moving heavy pans across the shelf. Setup was a project, but manageable. The box is dense, and there are a lot of pieces, so I laid everything out first and left the bolts a little loose until the frame was square. That saved me from fighting the side shelves into alignment later. Doing it solo, it took me a bit over an hour with a break for sanity. Once assembled, the first light was a push and turn on the knobs with the igniter button, and I got that clean whoosh across the burners. No drama, no external lighter. I did a burn-off session for about half an hour to clear any factory residue, then lightly oiled the grates while warm. Speed is where this grill won me over. From a cold start, I see the hood thermometer cruising past 500 degrees Fahrenheit at around the 10-minute mark, and if I let it ride, it pushes into searing territory without much coaxing. At grate level, it runs hotter than the lid gauge suggests, as most grills do. So when the lid shows 550 degrees Fahrenheit, the cast iron is ready to put down serious grill marks. The burners light consistently, and I haven't had a misfire in normal conditions. I did have a couple of flameouts on very windy days at the lowest setting, which I'll get into. But for everyday cooks, it's been reliable. Performance-wise, this thing has muscle. With 4 main burners and a side burner, the heat output feels like it's built to sear first, everything else second. The flame tamers spread heat across the surface pretty evenly. The back of the grill runs a bit hotter than the front, which I use to my advantage. Steaks up top for an aggressive crust, vegetables forward so they don't char too fast. Flare-ups are controlled as long as I keep the drip tray in check and avoid dumping sugary marinades directly over open flame. If I know I'm going saucy, I'll sear first, move to indirect, then brush on the glaze. Low temperature control is the weak spot. Even at the lowest setting, it wants to hover higher than I'd like for gentle cooks. When I tried to do chicken quarters like a smoker, the lid temp wanted to sit in the upper 300s and creep beyond. My workaround is to shut down the middle burners, run the outer ones low, and use the center as an indirect zone with a small foil pan of water as a heat buffer. That gets me closer to a controlled, indirect bake and keeps the skin from burning before the meat is done. It's not a purist smoker experience, but it's a workable approach if you're set on doing ribs or thicker poultry. In real use, the side burner became a surprise favorite. I've used it to boil corn while flipping burgers, and to keep a pan of bourbon glaze at a lazy simmer for pork chops. The flush lid doubles as extra prep space when it's closed, so I'm not losing a shelf to a fixed ring burner. On the main surface, I ran ribeyes about an inch thick and got a crust I'd be proud to serve anyone. 2 minutes per side on a ripping hot grate, rotated halfway for crosshatch. Then a slide to the cooler zone to coast to temp. The cast iron is what makes that feel effortless. It doesn't crash in heat when you put cold meat down. Vegetable skewers do well if I keep them on the medium zone. I like to blister peppers, and they pick up a little smoke as the drippings hit the flame tamers. Buns live on the warming rack for the last minute so they don't burn. I also ran a batch of bone-in chicken thighs using the indirect method. Outer burgers on low, center off. They finished evenly and the skin crisped without turning jet black. A small note, I've learned to keep the lid closed more than I would on a charcoal setup. This grill loses less heat and rebounds faster with the lid down. Popping it open too often lets the grates drop beneath that perfect sear window. Wind does expose a couple of design quirks. There's a vent gap at the back of the lid, normal for gas grills. But on gusty days, I've had the flame on low settings flicker or go out. A quick relight fixed it, but I keep an eye on it if the weather is kicking up. I've also felt the control knobs get warmer than I'd like when a crosswind pushes heat forward. It's not every session, but it's something I noticed during a long cook where wind was hitting the rear hard. Being able to rotate the grill with the casters actually solves a lot of that. I unlock, pivot a quarter turn, lock back down, and the problem calms. Cleanup is straightforward. The full-width pull-out grease tray is the hero here. After a session, I crank the burners for a quick burn-off to carbonize the crud. Then let it cool slightly, brush the grates, pull the tray, and dump the cup. The tray is thin enough that I don't want to neglect it. Leaving grease to sit is a shortcut to corrosion on any grill, and this one is no different. I've started giving the inside a periodic wipe and checking the flame tamers for buildup. For longevity, I cover the grill when it's cool and dry. The porcelain enamel on the grates helps, but they still appreciate a light oiling. Treat it like a piece of cast iron cookware and it rewards you. For a bigger cookout, I ran burgers, hot dogs, and veggie skewers on the main surface, corn on the side burner, and used the warming rack for buns and finished patties. I staged everything in trays on the side shelves, hung my tongs on the hooks, and never had to walk inside. One of the casters stays unlocked so I can nudge the grill to redirect smoke if it's pointed at the seating area. That's the ergonomic difference with the 4-caster design versus the classic 2-wheel lift and drag carts. When you're actively juggling food, being able to move the whole station with one hand is more valuable than it sounds. A few small gripes that add up if you don't stay on top of them. The interior components, like flame tamers, will show rust if you treat this like a park grill and leave it uncovered through rain. It's marketed as rust-resistant, which it is to a point, but maintenance matters. The low-end temperature range could be broader. I'd love a calmer simmer on the main burners for more flexible, slow cooking. An assembly isn't hard, but it's not a 20-minute task. Expect some time with a hex key and a step-by-step manual. Some thoughtful touches do make everyday use better. The lid thermometer is readable at a glance, and while it doesn't tell you exact grate temps, it's consistent enough to learn. The cabinet keeps clutter out of sight, which makes the area feel like an outdoor kitchen rather than a rolling frame. The handle stays relatively cool, so frequent checks and flips aren't a hazard. And the side burner's flush cover, giving me extra space when I'm not using it, turns that bay into a flexible station rather than a dedicated hole I have to work around. So where does that leave me? This is the grill I reach for when I want to cook hot and fast, feed a crowd, and keep the whole operation outside. It delivers serious searing power, it heats quickly, and it's easy to maneuver and manage. If you want a fuss-free slow smoker that cruises at low temps with zero effort, this isn't that. If you value steakhouse-level crusts, reliable ignition, a real side burner, and practical storage, and you're willing to maintain cast iron and keep the interior clean and covered, it's a rock-solid backyard workhorse. I plan to keep using it as my weeknight sear machine and weekend party station, with a little indirect technique in the toolkit for those chicken and ribs days. If this video helped, hit subscribe. Drop your questions or your own grill experiences in the comments, and I'll get back to you. Thank you for watching.